We're live.
We'll give everyone just a couple of more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. So welcome everybody to our Alleyway Improvement Town Hall. Our objective today is to discuss potential improvements to Pontiac alleyways and the ways that they can repurpose public space. Mayor Tim Greimel is joining us to kick off the meeting. So Mayor, I'll hand it over to you to welcome everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're here to discuss and most importantly, receive your input and feedback about your ideas and what you'd like to see done in regard to alleyways in downtown Pontiac. Alex is going to be submitting a grant. Alex is our grant person here at City Hall, and she is going to be drafting and preparing and ultimately submitting a grant proposal to improve the West Alley, which is the alley that runs parallel to Saginaw Street in downtown and is immediately west of Saginaw Street. And we want to certainly hear your feedback and input about what that grant proposal should look like and what kinds of improvements that you'd like to see to the West Alley. But we'd also love to hear your general feedback and general input about other alleys, especially other downtown alleys, but potentially even alleys elsewhere in the community. We're joined by a number of really great panelists. We've got Lynette Phillips with us, who is the city's Director of Economic Development. We're also joined by Vern Gustafson, who is the city planner and the manager of the city's planning division. I've already mentioned Alex, who does grant work for the city, and we're also joined by Chad Finley, who does engineering work for the city. And so without further ado, I want to turn it over to our panelists, who will get into some additional details about the possibilities here with the West Alley and beyond. And most importantly, we look forward to receiving your written feedback in the chat about what amenities you'd like to see and some of your ideas about how to beautify and enhance the alleyways downtown with an eye towards improving the quality of life here in Pontiac for everyone. So please take it away, panelists.
Thank you so much, Mayor. So first, I'd like to provide the why for the town hall. And that really is so that the city can gather feedback from residents and business owners and patrons of those businesses to better improve the sort of currently unused public space that are the Pontiac alleyways in the downtown area. The format of the meeting will be to review some of the possibilities for the alleyway and contextualize some of the improvements that are possible for the downtown alleyways, and then to provide a question and answer session for attendees to submit their questions or thoughts in the chat so that the various panelists can address those ideas or questions in this forum. Following that, I will provide a link to a survey where attendees are welcome to participate in public feedback in that way in written form and submit feedback via the survey itself. So to start, I will begin to share my screen and walk through a short presentation about the current condition and potential improvements to our alleyways. So why improve Pontiac's alleyways? There are a number of reasons for doing so. The first and foremost is that it's sort of this unused, untapped resource in terms of space. We have the opportunity to name alleyways, giving them identity, and take them from what are traditionally forgotten spaces to a space for community use. They provide open facades, entryways, and gateways into businesses. Windows and doors facing the alleyway allows for pedestrians, no matter their mode of transportation, to enter businesses and draws more interest to those local businesses. The alleyways can provide space for art and community programming, art installations, sculpture, murals, again, a place for community gathering. There are many green city initiatives and sustainability measures that can be implemented in the alleyways using native plants and renovating the alleyways to consider rainwater and stormwater runoff. The quality of the public space is greatly improved. It creates a diversity of in space downtown, and it promotes a walkable community. It allows a roundabout way to get to and access the businesses in our downtown region, and also creates a safer environment. Oftentimes the alleyways are neglected, have uneven pavement, are not ADA accessible, and this would allow us to upgrade some of the walking paths or biking paths through the alleyways so that they're safe places for our residents to enjoy. In addition, the upgrades to alleyways often include increased and improved lighting, railings and guardrails, and ramps for easy access. The alleyways create intimate and personal city spaces. They're human scale, and often the back of the building makes them interesting and sort of secretive in comparison to the streets and the sidewalks out on the storefronts. They become places to step out of the bustling and busy streets and walkways into a more quiet place for city leisure. Oftentimes they create space for festivals and events, musical performances and things of that nature. And they become sort of an artistic yet functional space for creativity and placemaking in cities such as Pontiac. Next, I want to show you a couple of examples of reimagined and renovated and improved alleyways in our community and beyond. And the first example is the Belt in Detroit. This is an alleyway that was improved both with city resources and grant funding that is pretty popular in the city of Detroit. The backs of several businesses open up to the alleyway, and it has been a venue for musical performances and event space for the businesses themselves, but it did offer also dual entry for the businesses that are located adjacent to the alleyway. All sorts of art installations have taken place there, whether that be sculpture and mural, but also even events such as weddings and ceremonies have taken place in this alleyway. And here are a couple of examples from the alleyway itself. The next example is the Bates Alley in Kalamazoo. This is a different approach to alleyway improvements. This was a very community-driven alleyway renovation, and so much so that the design aspect of the alley in the Bates Alley was both managed and overseen by the community itself, but the actual implementation was as well. So the residents were a part of both the front end design and planning phases, but also so much so as to paint the sidewalk itself. And the third example is not from a Michigan city, but it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And this is a different, a very different type of alleyway renovation, really focused on art and sculpture. And so you can see here that they renovated this alleyway to be an interactive art installation, which is very unique and incorporated both artistic design, but also lighting design to create a place away from the bustling city, hidden away in the city's alleyway system. The reason for this conversation, one reason amongst many others, is that there is an opportunity for a revitalization and placemaking grant. This opportunity is through the MEDC, And it is an opportunity for the city to apply for funding to redevelop an area in our downtown and rehabilitate this area. The city has decided that the alleyway improvement project would be a good project to submit. And so we're hoping to gather some feedback from residents, business owners, and business patrons about their thoughts about the alleyway improvement project and whether that might be a good fit for this grant opportunity. Next, I'll hand it over to Vern Gustafson to discuss the alleyway itself, its location, and the amount of space that would be available for this project.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Mayor, for the introduction. Some great points were made. As was indicated in regards to the West Alley, west of West Saginaw, wedged in between the area would extend from West Pike Street, heading north to Warren, which is one block north of M59. And we see this as that particular one in particular on the west side, or the West Alleyway as we're referring it to, is critical in regards to functioning in many ways. We talked about the great opportunities they could offer, but it also has to be functioning in regards to existing business and potential businesses that could be facing that direction. With that opportunity, we see, either through some pavement or whatever is needed to function it in a proper way, including infrastructure improvements in regards to stormwater and also rainwater that's in that area. I'll turn it back to Alex for any further details and next steps.
The next slide is for Lynette Phillips, who's the Economic Development Director here, and she'll discuss business and economic development opportunities as it relates to the alleyway.
Alex, thank you. And Mayor, again, thank you for the introduction. This West Alley will have a tremendous impact on businesses and economic development downtown. And just to give you a sense of what opportunities are available, right now there are approximately 59 retail shops. There are 13 bars and restaurants. There are hundreds of employees and downtown residents. And then we have these Circuit, which is the social district downtown, which actually has 6 restaurants that are already included in there. We have the Pontiac Farmers Market, which provides buzz and activities, and also opportunities just in the surrounding area, not necessarily in the alley, but on the street surrounding it for street vendors, which would be included in the alley, but food trucks, pop-ups, and more activities. And then we've got the Hidden River Park, which is nearby. And all of these activities and opportunities really provide more economic and development and foot traffic for our downtown. So there are some advantages and opportunities that we would look forward to in terms of just having this alley. And if you've been to the one in Detroit, you'll see that it's used for photo shoots, outdoor dining, seating, and music can be infused, and additional lighting. It just creates additional foot traffic and more activities in our downtown. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Alex.
Thank you. So at this point, we'd like to take questions from the attendees and field them to the panelists so that we can gather feedback from our webinar and town hall attendees and answer any questions that they might have. So if you have a question and you'd like to participate in the discussion, please drop it in the chat and we will answer them as they come in. So it looks like we have our first question. How much will we be seeking from the grant giver or the grantor? So the award ceiling for the RAP grant, which is the Revitalization and Placemaking Grant, for this portion of the grant is $1 million. The next question I will direct at Vern. Can elements of the alley concepts extend north of Lafayette near Lot 2 at Lafayette and Wayne near Lafayette Grand Banquet Center?
We're talking about on the east side alley. Is that what we're referring to? Oh, I see what you're saying. Never mind. That could be a potential. We would have to look at it a little bit closer. There was been some discussion. I'm not too sure if the property alley actually extends all the way to Lafayette. That's the only question we would have to have answered. But that could be a possibility.
So Vern, I have another question for you. One of the participants asked, is there a possibility to do something in the future on the east side by Erebus, Crowfoot, and the museum?
As a matter of fact, I remember early on there was some discussion in regards to the east side also. As we move further into the development of the west side, we can see, how funding opportunities could further expand upon the east side of the of Saginaw. And I think it's important to note that, I did have an opportunity to look back in a plan that was done for the downtown back in 2001. And it did not mention too much about alley improvements, but there was, during that public engagement, there was quite a bit of conversation that went on that talked about two things. One thing was definitely making the alleyways more pedestrian friendly, and also to keep in mind from a design perspective was also to complement what is going on Saginaw Street. Secondly, as part of that plan in 2001, there was quite a bit of conversation in regards to daylighting the Clinton River. And the concept was actually to mimic it on the east side of the loop, which I believe kind of gave a little bit more accurate location. But I think that overall thought in regards to daylighting the Clinton River in regards to, from a design perspective, from a pavement perspective, not to include waters within the alley, but in regards to pavement markings and the like, or information that could be talked about and presented as part of the alley concept.
But if I may, I think the short answer is absolutely. We can potentially do something in the East Alley. We've had some internal discussions around that. It's probably beyond the scope of the grant that Alex is going to be preparing and submitting, only because there's only so much funding available, realistically available through that grant proposal. But it is of interest to us to do something in the East Alley as well, longer term, because we have some really great establishments along the East Alley, including the haunted house and some of the adjacent properties that house a museum and some other, I think, really great attractions here in downtown Pontiac.
Thank you. One of our attendees asked, can anything be done in the near term before receiving the grant to improve the lighting in the alleyways, to improve safety in and around downtown? Better lighting remains an unmet need throughout the downtown.
Vern, do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. No, I was just trying to, I know that in talking with, it would be something that we've been discussing preliminarily with DPW and looking at some initial improvements that could be made. And we're going to be exploring that a little bit further to see what type of improvements are needed or are more critical, and go from there to determine the overall impact that it could be making on a preliminary stand.
One of the attendees asks, once the grant is awarded, will Pontiac take bids from developers of the projects shown in the slides? So to answer that question, the city, per city ordinance, has a procurement process that will require an RFP process, as well as various other mechanisms to provide for equitable access to the bidding process. So the city would follow city ordinance in that regard. Another individual asks, there's a small park with a large yellow chair near Lafayette Grand. Will this be part of the alleyway concept?
It could be, yeah, the yellow chair, we call it the Saginaw Green. And that is one additional space in addition to Hidden River Park that we would contemplate some further enhancements and improvements, even as relates to a little bit more comforting, a little bit more other types of, a different type of space compared to Hidden River Park.
Although I would note that it's further north than the northern terminus of the West Alley project as identified on the map. And so it would require some sort of extension if it were part of this grant proposal. Is that fair to say, Vern?
It would be. It would be. It's kind of wedged, yes, wedged in between Warren and Lafayette, but it's just past a couple of buildings, so technically it could fit in within that frame. Depending, and it really will come down to in regards to at the end, you know, once plans are completed, what the design is and budget. We do have some preliminary figures taking a look at it. We can you know, see where the monies fall to make sure we can get some of that improvement made.
Another participant asks, what about fixing the roadway? I assume meaning the pavement and the alleyway to make it safe to walk. So in consideration of this project, the walkability and the safety of the pavement and the alleyway was a primary focus. That would certainly be included in any sort of grant project or proposal we submitted to the funder. Another guest asks, there are inexpensive things that can be done in the alleyways, perhaps if the dumpsters are dealt with, as not to dedicate the entire alleyway to trash storage and removal, while still having fire truck access, etc. Vern, would you like to speak to that question as well? Sorry to put you in the hot seat here.
No, that's fine. You know, as a matter of fact, it's been an ongoing issue ever since I've been here in regards to trash collection, where the dumpsters are placed. Some of them are actually located on private property because of the location of them, and some are directly in the alley. And we'll have to make you know, as we're planning and designing, we'll have to figure out how we're going to deal with that type of needed type of facility, or, you know, that type of a use that would be there for that type of reason, along with obviously making everything else, you know, accessible in regards to fire access, deliveries, and other types of, you know, functions that the alley provides.
So with that, I actually am out of questions. I'll give folks maybe one more minute to submit any questions they might have, or suggested amenities that they might like to see in their alleyways. I don't see any other questions or ideas coming through. What we've done to provide an opportunity for written feedback is we've developed a survey that's online. I will drop the survey into the chat, and I will send this around via email to all of the residents in the city so they can provide feedback. And if you have any further questions, you are welcome to reach out to myself or any of the panelists here, and we'd be happy to address those questions in preparation of the grant application. And before we close out, I did see two questions just come in. One, if this is meant to incentivize new businesses to open in downtown, how can we assure that any sort of improvements to the alleyway don't cause landlords to inflate their rent prices? I'm not sure who to kick this question to. Perhaps you may or might like to address this question itself.
Yeah, there's certainly no easy way to prevent landlords from charging what they believe they can get for rent. And, you know, we and I personally have reached out to landlords on this topic as we seek to make downtown a truly inclusive place for residents and for businesses. So it is an important question. obviously, if these improvements lead landlords to believe that they can obtain higher rents, that assuming that landlords are being rational about the marketplace, that would suggest that these improvements are making downtown more of a destination, that it's increasing the number of businesses that want to locate downtown as a reflection of the fact, presumably, that more people and potential customers and patrons want to come downtown. And it's that desire of businesses to locate downtown, or that increased desire of businesses to locate downtown, that would presumably lead landlords to think they can raise rents. But the short answer is there's nothing that the city can do to prohibit landlords from raising rents to what they believe is the market rate. But again, as I have in the past, and as we will continue to do here at City Hall, we're going to continue to encourage landlords to think about things in the long term, not the short term. And in the long term, it's in everybody's interest to make sure that downtown is an inclusive and welcoming place for everybody, that we have a diverse array of businesses, and that we're focused on bringing people downtown, bringing more businesses downtown to make downtown vibrant. And that ultimately means not pricing businesses out of downtown.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
This next question is for Lynette. The attendee wants to know about potential opportunities to have artists paint the alleyway walls, or perhaps have artist installations in the alleyway. Do you think that this would be a good tool for economic development to include arts and culture in the alleyway?
I'd say we definitely would love to have artistic enhancements to the alley, and that would include having artists paint maybe murals, or maybe add some type of installation piece, and that would be something that we would look into as well, and provide try to have an opportunity for some artists to provide that.
This next question is for you as well, Annette. Have we studied opportunities for low-cost real estate, or perhaps rental spaces in the alleyways that face the alleyways, perhaps bars or retail spaces, sort of micro businesses that could be in the alley-facing buildings, or in pop-ups, perhaps opportunities like the farmers market?
And we know that we have some vacancy space downtown that would provide an opportunity for businesses, either in the form of permanent brick and mortar, or it could also be like from pop-ups and the surrounding businesses, not just in the alley but nearby. I think someone even asked a question regarding the foot traffic. So we know that certain events draw traffic downtown, that downtown is actually a destination in many cases. And so the idea or the hope would be for the businesses to, between the activities and the permanent businesses, brick and mortar, the pop-ups, that we would draw more people, and have the businesses would just thrive more, have more activities for our residents and the business community.
If I may, Lynette, to piggyback in regards to, particularly on the real estate side, I've seen where business owners on obviously first floor, in regards to particularly small business owners, can't afford to lease out a whole floor of whatever X number of square feet. But maybe if they are facing the alley with proper access and lighting and all of that, they might be able to rent out a smaller space for what their needs are. And it does then afford the opportunity for that property owner to at least maybe have, depending how the building can be carved up, we maybe get 2 or 3 businesses on that first floor.
The other thing I would add in regard to art installations downtown is that we have had a number of conversations with the Arts Commission about exactly this. I know the Arts Commission has begun identifying locations in and around downtown for public art installations. And so that is something that is already being pursued and will continue to be pursued, but there have already been some locations identified for art installations. And we have been in touch with several muralists about doing some art in and around downtown. So stay tuned for the details, but this is something that we believe adds value downtown. We believe it adds to the fabric of downtown and makes downtown a more interesting place and a more attractive place for people to visit and spend time.
Great. One of the questions from Facebook asked, what percentage of the buildings are occupied in downtown Pontiac? Lynette or Vern, did you want to speak to that?
I'm not too sure if, I don't believe I have any recent data as relates to that. I do know that there is a number of, we did a study, I would say, towards, in the fall of last year, actually my code enforcement team did, and we found that there was, I believe, either roughly about 60 first floor spaces of buildings within the downtown that were vacant, which is a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
And we understand that. So I think things are moving faster in regards to many fronts to resolve that, to get some of the spaces leased up. I'm gathering that also more recently, there's been a number of property owners coming in because of it being within one of our historic districts, getting them working with them to get either through the Historic Commission or doing it administratively. So it's good. It's good things that are happening that I'm sensing ever since the end of last year and definitely in the beginning of this year.
And I'm going to concur with Vern that there is, there are some vacancies, but there's really a lot of interest for businesses to come downtown. And even like with the farmers market, people are looking at spaces and more retail and food. So there are some, again, opportunities to increase occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. One of our attendees asked, and this would be directed towards Chad, can you talk more about potential or possible water, electrical, and other infrastructure that could be placed in the alley for public use?
Certainly, when you're replacing pavement, doing improvements like this, you want to look at upgrading the utilities. Certainly in the alleys, there are storm drains that would need to be replaced. Additionally, I don't expect that there's much water main. Those are typically in Saginaw and some of the other major streets, but certainly electrical, phone, anything running through those alleys really should be upgraded at that time.
Thank you. So we'll give folks a second here to place any more questions. It looks like someone asked they're interested in any sort of access to electrical or public restrooms. Chad, are those types of improvements possible for this type of grant opportunity or future development of the alleyways?
Yeah, certainly. So there's a couple things there. As far as the electrical goes, certainly for site lighting, that's something that could be done as part of this grant, because you do want a well-lit, inviting place. As far as electrical services to businesses, that would really have to be done through service planning with DTE. That's not something that could be part of this grant or part of this project, but it could be done in conjunction with it. So if, what we don't want to do is put down all this work and then have someone dig it up to replace an electrical service. So there's an opportunity while the pavement's gone to do some upgrades, to do some service planning.
And the question may be driven in part due to the plans to have the farmers market in the West Alley. And in that case, it would be helpful to have electrical outlets that are available for vendors. Similarly, that may be driving the question about a public restroom. If people are outside for the farmers market, rather than relying on the goodwill of brick and mortar establishments to allow people to use inside restrooms, it might be helpful to have outdoor restrooms, even if they're not open all the time. At least they could be opened for special events like farmers market days and that sort of thing. So my guess is that the question about electrical outlets and a public restroom may be driven in part by considerations around hosting the farmers market and, for that matter, other events in the West Alleyway.
Absolutely.
One of our attendees from Facebook asks, what are the long-term plans for parking? Will there be parking lots? Will parking be free? Will there be parking, or will people and the residents of downtown have a pay to park system and partake a part of the alley and for businesses? So I think this question is really asking, what are the city's plans for parking outside of the alleyway?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Vern in a moment, but I do just want to preface that by saying we have very serious challenges when it comes to parking downtown. The emergency managers sold all of our surface parking lots, and so the city does not own any surface parking lots anymore. The city did own and control the Phoenix Center parking until last year, when the previous mayor leased for 100 years the parking garage portion of the Phoenix Center to the owners of Ottawa Towers. And so the city no longer has any control over the Phoenix Center parking either. And so as a result of those two dynamics, the city does not have any control over any parking downtown other than on-street parking. And perhaps, I guess the one caveat to that is the northeast corner of the Phoenix Center footprint. So not the Phoenix Center structure, but the northeast corner of the footprint where the bus stop is actually still owned by the city. But that's a relatively limited number of parking spaces. In terms of on-street parking, we have been diligently working to reinstitute parking management downtown. And Vern, I don't know if you have any updates in terms of the timeline there, where things stand, or just in terms of ballpark time estimates for when that will be back up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, as a matter of fact, we hope to receive a contract or agreement from a parking management company to assist the city in regards to parking management in the areas along Saginaw, from Water Street up to Lafayette, and also along East and West Lawrence. So when that comes in, I'll be having a chance to review with the administration and others to get it implemented. And then we're talking about probably, to educate and to inform our residents that we do have parking, paid parking required now on our on-street parking spaces. It'll take a little bit of time to educate, but the information will all become available.
Thank you. Well, it seems that we have answered all of the questions in both the Q&A portion as well as in the chat. So what I'd like to do is first I will submit the survey in the chat that has been sent to everyone. You're welcome to visit that website and that link and complete the survey, so that information will come to the city staff and we'll be able to use it in our planning for our grant application to WRAP and the MEDC. And I encourage you to share that with your neighbors and fellow business owners. This will be also sent out to city residents via email. And again, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, feel free to reach out directly as we navigate this application process for the alleyway improvement in the West Alley. Mayor, would you like to say any closing words before we close out the webinar?
Well, first, I want to thank all of the panelists for being a part of this, but even more importantly, I want to thank all of the public participants. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us this afternoon. Thank you for your valuable input. The comments that have been shared have all been really, really helpful and will certainly be incorporated and help direct our process as we prepare the grant application and submit the grant application And then, of course, if and when we receive grant dollars and set about the actual improvements themselves, we'll continue to be in touch with the public, with downtown business owners, with residents, with potential customers and patrons to continue to make sure that your input is taken into account as we actually break ground and implement these important infrastructure improvements with an eye towards improving the quality of life here in Pontiac. So thank you all once again. Really appreciate your valuable input, and we'll continue to make sure that we're reaching out to the community, doing town halls, and receiving your comments, your thoughts, and your feelings about how best to move our community forward. Thank you all once again.